Okay, one time I was sitting with his sister at the table, and she was feeding me like all his sisters would stuff me with food all the time. And she, at one moment, it was late at night, and she was giving me tea, and we had some little crackers, and she jumped back, and she said, she's like, oh my God, I thought you were Milton. I thought you were my brother. And for a second, she totally jumped back and thought that I was him for a second. I was very surprised. I never felt that I looked like him that much. And for his sister to say that, I felt maybe some kind of connection with him that I didn't realize I had before. I was shocked because I was on the steps of. This was back when I lived at my mom's house, and he was coming up the steps to the house. I was on top where the door is, and he wouldn't approach me. He just sat there and said hello from a couple steps down, and it was shocking. I felt it like it wasn't the same person. It's not the guy I knew. Um, as growing up, my mom was more of a meek person. She was kind of like a church lady, like to, be more quiet. My dad was always, he seemed assertive. He knew when we would travel together in the city, he knew what streets to go on. He knew what he was doing and how to get it. He started several businesses, and the guy I saw would barely speak, and um, he shocked me when I saw him. I couldn't even believe it was him because I've never seen anything like that before. And a strong guy, an imposing guy. He was like 6'1", 6'2", and he was healthy. He was at a healthy weight. It's about 200. And when I saw him that time when after his depression, I heard over the phone that he just got back from the hospital the first time, and he came to the house, and he looked like he lost weight. He looked older, a lot older. His hair was kind of, he always had a big full head of hair like I do, and his hair was kind of falling out. It was thinning, and his body language was more, it was smaller. It was you could tell that there was something, not just mentally, but physically. He was just not, he was almost like a skeleton. It did me a lot to see him this way, because growing up with my single mother, she was very good at keeping me away. She sheltered me a lot. So she kept me away from deaths in the family and things like that. And so I was very sheltered to that, which now looking back, I think it wasn't so good, because when these tragic things eventually do happen as you grow up, you get very bruised and damaged by it a lot more when you're not used to it. So when I saw my dad like that, it really, it was a paradigm shift in the sense that I didn't know that this thing could happen. I didn't know that my dad could be this way, that he wouldn't look at me. I would talk on the phone with him and he wouldn't respond. There would just be long pauses. I would say, "Hey, how are you?" And he would say, "I'm fine," and just pause and just not talk about anything. Yeah, I mean, he loved hammer throwing, and as a kid, we would go to. Um, he lived in Rockville at that time, so I think it was probably a school near Rockville, Maryland, and he would take me. He had a blue hammer. I think it was about 20 pounds, and he would show me the stance, how to throw it. And he always would joke around that I had to gain weight, I had to be bigger to throw it like him. So as a kid, he would always joke about that. And he liked tennis too, but he loved hammer throwing, and that was one of the sports that he always took me to go watch him do. Basically, my mom took me to South America to live with her parents for a while, and we came back. I was born here, but I went there to live with them. We came back, and my dad was still here. He worked for the embassy, the Argentinian embassy. And so one day he came. One of the first times he came to see me, we went to the DC Zoo, and I'll never forget the day. It was fall, and like I said, he was such a contrast compared to my mom. He knew how to drive. He had a radio. He was doing some deliveries for the embassy, So he had a Volkswagen, a red Volkswagen, and he would just zip around the city. He knew the streets, he knew where to go, whereas my mom would be very careful about not walking close to the street, to watch out for the stranger. He was more, he knew where he wanted to go, he knew how to do it. And we went to the zoo together, and I just had the sense of protection, like everything is okay. I felt like I always had to make sure that she was okay, that nobody's gonna hurt her, that we could be victims. But I was like 6 or 7, so with my dad, I remember just not feeling that. Like he was in control, and he was gonna take care of not just me, but just make sure nobody could hurt me or nobody could kidnap me. I had a fear of being kidnapped a lot when I was a kid for some reason, because I had a single mother, and she was kind of timid, and so with him there was none of that. So it was a freeing thing. I remember we went to the cafeteria at the zoo, and he bought me a hamburger there. And normally my mom would get me McDonald's hamburgers, but the hamburgers at the zoo, they had the sesame seeds, and I never saw those before, and I would just pick them off. And I thought it was such a big deal back then to see the sesame seeds on there, but it's so minor now. It was a Saturday, and I received a text from my half sister, and we're not close at all now, unfortunately, and it has a lot to do with this. But just a very blunt text that said, "Your father has been shot." We don't know what's going on. And he lives in Baltimore. I live in Gaithersburg. So she was saying, don't go there yet until you could find out what's going on. And later on, that caused a huge rift in the family, because they feel that I should have ran over there to figure out what was going on. My mom was looking out, I guess, more for my safety. She said, call the police, see what's going on there. She didn't want something to happen to me. So to be honest, I think maybe I did the wrong thing there, but at that point, I took my mother's advice, because I felt that she probably had my best interest at heart, and she told me to wait and call the police and find out that way, and don't just go over there right away. It's like that. I had just lost my grandparents a couple years before, and that was really hard because I lived with them for a while. So that was my own, besides that was my only experience with a close family death. And then my dad dying was definitely the closest. So I was in shock. I thought, maybe could this be some kind of joke or some kind of mistake that I received this text. I couldn't believe it at first, because it was such a strange way to communicate about a death. I wouldn't do that to someone. I wouldn't text somebody that their father died. But maybe it shows the relationship that we had. Maybe it wasn't as close as I thought. I don't know.